Hello and welcome to the 140k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a big thank you to Ain Cam for sending in some awesome pictures of his female Catachan Imperial Guard soldiers. I actually really like these models. They're by Raging Heroes. I've seen a few of their things. They did some sisters models as well, and they tend to do models which are quite dynamically posed and just doing action shots and all that kind of stuff, and they're quite well detailed and high quality models. So if you're looking for maybe some more dynamically posed guardsmen or sisters models, and they do other bits and bobs, I highly recommend that you check them out. So thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, then please post them on my Facebook page, or you can email them directly to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com, and there will be links and emails down in the description below, so don't worry, you don't have to remember it. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So what we're going to be taking a quick look at today, guys, is the old Rattling snipers. Now, for those of you that aren't aware of these models and this unit, they're not very common. You don't see them too often on the tabletop, but I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the old Rattlings. I think some people don't like them because they're essentially hobbits with sniper rifles, and that's a bit of a meme unit. They are an abhuman unit. But what I tend to find is a lot of people that run Rattlings actually run them with just the regular sniper models, either the Cadian ones or the Catachan ones, because at the end of the day, they're just snipers essentially. So if anyone's worried about, I don't like Rattlings because of the models, then, well, don't worry about it. Like, I tend to find that it's generally accepted that it's okay to use just regular old sniper models to represent your Rattling squad. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. So let's get the real life stuff out of the way first, right? And then let's dive into the tactics. So let's take a look at these bozos. They've got an interesting stat line. They've only got a movement of 5 inches. Remember that it's not the usual 6 inches that we have with all the other units. I mean, you'd think if these guys, if Guardsmen move 5 and if Guardsmen move 6 and these guys move 5, then Ogren should move 7. Anyway, let's not get into it. Let's not get cynical here. So they've got a movement of 5. They've only got a weapon skill of 5+, so poor, but they've got a blitz skill of 3+, which is something very sought after in the Guard. They've only got strength of 2. They've only got a toughness of 2, and they've only got 1 wound, 1 attack. They have got a measly leadership 5, and they only have a 6+ save. So you might be thinking, why the hell would you take these things? Well, firstly, you're taking them because they've got blitz skill 3+, and you're taking them because they come with a sniper rifle baked in. Okay? Now, they also have a number of very interesting special rules. The first one, which is arguably the one that we're going to be covering a lot today, is called Find the Best Spot. Instead of deploying normally, this unit may wait until both armies are fully deployed and then be placed anywhere on the board that is more than 18 inches away from enemy models. Okay. You then also have a rule called Shoot Sharp and Scarper. Immediately after making a shooting attack other than Overwatch, this unit can move as if it were the movement phase, though it cannot advance as part of this move. You also have Naturally Stealthy. Models in this unit receive a +2 bonus to their saving throw when they receive the benefits of cover instead of only +1, which basically means they get a 4+ saving cover like everybody else, because Guardsmen in cover get a 4+ save. So now that we know those rules, what are some quick tactics that we can use these guys for? Well, the first is the most obvious one. Look, these guys aren't very tough, but they've got good range, they've got good ballistic skill, and they've come with a decent, a half decent weapon. If you're going to run snipers, I mean, snipers aren't the most point efficient unit, but if you're going to run some snipers, then Rattlings are pretty much the only way to do it. Because veterans can take sniper rifles, but they can only take 3 sniper rifles in a 10-man squad. You don't really want to put a sniper in your regular infantry squad. Sniper special weapon squads are okay, but they've recently gone up in points weirdly. And they've only got ballistic skill of 4+. You could take sniper command squads. That is the second best way of running snipers, or joint first best way with Rattlings. But the thing is, a lot of the time you want to be running your command squads with things like 4 plasma guns or 4 melter guns. You're going to want to be outflanking them. So I would strongly argue that Rattlings are our sort of best, most point-efficient sniper unit. And the best thing is you can take these guys in pretty big squads. They come with a minimum of 5. And you can take 10 bozos in a squad, which is pretty good. So the first role that you have for them is their typical role. You take 10 of them, or 5 of them. I would normally take a big squad of 10. and I put them in the backfield, and I just plink away with them. Can't go wrong. 10 Rattlings will probably get a mortal wound a turn on top of the other damage that they do. Not too bad. I mean, if you look, what, 10 Rattling shots you're going to hit with, well, if you're not being kind, you're going to hit with 6. You're going to hit between 6 and 7. That's almost a guaranteed mortal wound every single time, which is quite decent, actually. It means you can it's a guaranteed wound on almost any unit in the game. It's about 100 points. It's not even that. Rattlings are relatively cheap, actually, but it's about 100 points for a guaranteed wound on almost any target in the game, and then in addition to that, you get the damage from the actual sniper rifles themselves. So they're not super point efficient, but they're one of these units which you'll never be blown away by taking them, but you'll also never be massively disappointed by taking them if you just take them as a squad of backfield snipers. Now, the problem with taking Rattlings in this capacity is they're not so cheap. I mean, they're decently priced, but they're not so cheap. You know, there are other units which have better damage to points efficiency out there. And also, the Imperial Guard elite slots do tend to be heavily contested with other great options. So they potentially could be fighting for a valuable elite slot. So there's that. Now, another way of looking at them, and this is, I would say, sort of the second, sort of 2 of 3 potential ways you can use these guys, is to really embrace 9th edition. And use these guys as early board, early objective controlling people. So you can, using the special rule find the best spot, you can deploy anywhere on the board as long as it's 18 inches away from the enemy. Now, of course, the enemy could deploy along their front line, their board edge, which would mean that typically there's about a 24-inch gap between both armies. No man's land on 40k boards tends to be about 24 inches, which means really you're only able to deploy 6 inches out of your deployment zone. But, you know, again, that's a sort of a paper theory hammer view of the Rattling's rule. The actual reality of it is that it's very unlikely that your opponent is going to have lined up along his entire front line. He'll probably be either in the middle, he'll go for a flank, especially with these elite armies. So you will probably find that you will get to deploy at least 6 inches out of your deployment zone, or you'll get to deploy potentially 12 inches outside your deployment zone. And what you've got to understand is that it says, instead of deploying normally, the unit may wait until both armies are fully deployed and then be placed anywhere on the board that is more than 18 inches away from enemy models. Now, apologies if this has been addressed as an FAQ somewhere, it could be, but I don't believe it has. That means that if your opponent left if you took a small unit and your opponent left part of his board, his deployment zone, totally unoccupied, and he really went on one flank rather than another, it is entirely possible that you will either be able to deploy in your opponent's deployment zone or very close to it, which could start getting you things like engage off fronts. It could start getting you things like line breaker. It could start getting you things like repair teleporter homer or engage homer, deploy scrambler. Sorry. So the way you look at Rattlings is they're actually able to do 2 things with this deployment rule. One, they're able to potentially score you some secondaries if your opponent leaves some gaps open, because you're not deep striking. I mean, if we think about this from a psychological point of view, your opponent is likely to ask, oh, do you have any scions? Do you have any deep strikers? And you can go, no, I don't have any scions. I don't have any deep strikers. I have nothing coming in from reserve. And therefore, your opponent might be like, oh, well, I don't need to screen. I don't need to screen as much. I don't need to spread out as much. I'll form a death ball. If he does that, then your Rattlings can start, scoring some decent secondary objectives, which is good. That's points. Points being prizes. So that's one way of looking at it from a secondary point of view. But from a primary objective point of view, they're also fantastic, because let's say you can only deploy 6 inches out of your deployment zone, or let's say you deploy them, but you deploy them out of line of sight. Okay, and then, or you just risk it, you deploy them in line of sight. But what that allows you to do is then with their forward deployment, and then the fact they get to move, so there's a good chance these guys will get to the middle of the board, middle board objectives, turn 1. And the best thing is if you combine find the best spot with shoot, sharp and scarper, which is intended to be used to shoot and then move out of line of sight. Remember that. But you could instead use it to shoot and then move forward towards the enemy. So whilst these guys have technically only got a movement of 5 inches, in theory they have a movement of 10 inches because you're able to move and then you shoot, sharp and scarper to shoot and then move again, which is nice. So you could deploy 6 inches out of your deployment zone or further, but let's say the minimum is you deploy 6 inches out of your deployment zone, then you move and then you shoot and move again. That is potentially a 16-inch movement from your deployment zone in turn 1. Okay, now this brings me on to the third use for Rattlings, which is board control and screening the enemy. Okay, now Rattlings can be used as very effective speed bumps. And it's just, it might seem like it's a bit of a harsh tactic to use for these little heroes, but it is a good tactic to use them for, because if you use this, if you go first, if you get turn 1 and you have a couple of units of Rattlings, then or one big unit of Rattlings that you could help string out potentially, although I think you'd want to do it with 2 units of 5, because then you can make a big wall of 10, where if you take one big unit of 10 you have to form 2 ranks because of the unit coherency rules. But the point is that you could push these guys forward, you could move, then you could shoot, then you could move again. You're 16 inches minimum out of your deployment zone. That is screening. Firstly, it's screening enemy reserves, and you don't have to go the full distance. Now, the enemy reserves may not come in until turn 2. Okay, so this is almost a tactic that you use if you go second. You go second, you hope your Rattlings don't get killed, and then you push them forward as an effective screening unit, which is nice. Because people are unlikely to target them, because they are generally considered as a low threat unit, and you're not using them to score damage. So you go second, your Rattlings don't get killed, your turn, you've already 6 inches out of the deployment zone, and then bam, bam, move, shoot, move, you are screening the enemy reserves out, you've got ball control, fantastic. But let's say you do go first. What a unit of Rattlings or a couple of units of Rattlings can be nice to do is to block enemy movement. So a lot of 9th edition boards are really terrain heavy, and a lot of 9th edition boards tend to actually have lots of corridors, lots of streets, lots of paths, rather than you'll have like a couple of big L shapes and some craters and then some deployment in each other's deployment, some terrain in each other's deployment zone. But there will be a few corridors of movement for things like vehicles and non-infantry units which can't just breach through walls. And what you can use your Rattlings for there is to move, to forward deploy, move, shoot, move, and then actually you're blocking your opponent off. I mean, one of the more popular units out there are biker type units. Marine bikes are really strong. Now, especially with Ravenwing being at the forefront of the meta at the moment. Now those Ravenwing, they can't just breach through walls. So what does that mean? Well, your diminutive little Rattlings, they start, you take a squad or 2 of them, they can just block off movement-wise those Ravenwing bikers, because guess what? Those Ravenwing, they can move and they'll shoot and charge and clear those Rattlings very easily. But if you've pushed your Rattlings up and you're blocking off one of those corridors, then rather than those Ravenwing bikers potentially moving 16 inches or further, I know they can go a long way, they may only get to move 8 inches, they may only get to move 6 inches, and then they shoot, and it's like, yay, they're not in the middle of the board, but they've killed some Rattlings. So it's kind of like they can actually be used as movement blocker units, which is quite a tactical way of using them. What I'm trying to say, guys, is that you don't have to pick your Rattlings and before you go into the game and be like, this is the way I put them into the list, I'm always going to use them as snipers, or I'm always going to be using the movement blockers. They're a flexible tactical unit. You could take a couple of squads of 5 and you might say to yourself, I'm taking these and I'll either keep them back and use them as fire support in one mission, but the next game in that tournament I might be facing Ravenwing, I need to push forward, I need to movement block those Ravenwing. And it's quite amusing having a bunch of halflings movement blocks and the most manoeuvrable Astartes out there. You know, get your troll face ready for if you manage to pull it off. So they are a tactically flexible unit. You can use them in one game and then use them in the next game in a totally different manner, and they'll still be contributing to the game. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. If you think I have missed something or there's a mistake in the video, as always, please let me know down in the comment section below. I genuinely am fully open-minded to criticism. All feedback, positive and negative, I always read it. I don't reply to every comment, but I always read them. And I try and make sure that I take the feedback into consideration for my next videos. And of course, if anyone has got any tactics for their Rattlings that I haven't suggested, I haven't covered in this video, please put that down in the comment section below. I always like enjoying reading other people's tactics, and I may even do a video on it if it's something that I think, wow, that's actually a really good perspective on that. That goes for Rattlings, but to be honest, that goes for any videos. If you want me to, if you guys want me to cover a particular topic that you don't think I've covered before, or you've got a question or whatever, please put it down in the comment section below, and I may use it to pick up and use that in a future video. Anyway, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.